Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 2020 Annual Reentry Reform web series that the Connecticut Reentry Collaborative and the IMRP have been hosting since April. And this is our third, part 3, Make It Happen May series. It's Wednesday, May 20th. An important day in Connecticut as we're beginning to open up businesses and other operations after a shutdown during the coronavirus. Today, we're going to be talking about employment and investing in communities to support successful reentry. And so we'll be focusing on the reentry process and employment. And we're going to go a little bit off the agenda because we have, luckily have with us Douglas Wade, who owns Wade's Dairy in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And he has to bump off on another call, but we're very fortunate to have him on this morning. And I know he's busy. Prior to, as we were getting ready to the call, he talked about a number of media outlets that have been in touch with him about his opening and about, he mentioned being a second chance employer. So Mr. Wade, I'd like to have the floor be yours, and maybe you can just tell us a little bit about your business and about your experience in hiring formerly incarcerated individuals. And I think it's also be enlightening for us just to hear how you are as a business in general during this time.
Okay, well, it's been a rough road, but we have survived COVID-19. Back on March 13th, we were doing about 115 public school systems. Let's say on March 12th, we were doing 115 public school systems, and on Friday the 13th, we were doing 0. And we had about 8,000 cases of school milk in the pipeline in our warehouse on trailers. And we're looking at, Pandora's box, so to speak. And then we had all the restaurants and diners, and a lot of our convenience stores were slowing way down because people weren't driving as much, and a lot of issues going on. We've survived all those. We got much busier running specials. We had a lot of grocery stores calling us that weren't our customers, that couldn't get their pipelines filled with milk. So now they have become our customers. And we also were getting calls for home delivery service. And we got out of home service back in 1992 after doing it for 100 years. So it was kind of, unbelievable these calls were coming in for home service. So we shifted gears and we pivoted, and we sent a couple of our trucks up to do home service, our smaller vehicles. And to this date, we've added 265 customers. And the response has been many customers thinking I'm a saint for getting back into this. And, thank you for saving us. And there's certainly been a profit motive in it for us. It is profitable business for us to take on, but we have been getting terrific media coverage. Channel 12 News picked us up, interviewed us, and then WICC interviewed us, and then WSHU and the Fairfield County Business Journal picked up the story, and then went on and on. There were a few other players that picked up the story. And then I got a phone call from a young lady who is a Wall Street Journal reporter, and she did a beautiful story on us that was published this past weekend. And it's online. If you look up Wade's Dairy on the Wall Street Journal, you'll see the nice story, and that got a lot of play. And then Monday afternoon, I get a phone call from CNN News, and they were here at my dairy for 3 hours yesterday, and they're going to do a big story on Friday. And as part of that interview, I told them that I was a second chance employer and that I had hired at least 7 formerly felony convicted people to work for me. And I've had a wonderful experience with that. These people would give me the shirt off their back, and I would do the same for them. They've just been great employees. And so I find it kind of speechless that more people don't see this as a wonderful source of good, hardworking people. And so that's the point I wanted to get across. And I don't know that that'll be part of the TV, little documentary on Wade's Dairy come Friday. It's supposed to be aired on Friday. And I'll send out an email blast to everyone in my Outlook, about when that show is going to come on.
Thank you so much. Well, it's so good to hear your story, and it sounds like, as we've been trying to do during this series, is turn crisis into opportunity. It sounds like you're doing that there. I remember the home delivery, back when I was delivering the current door to door as a paper boy in the 70s. We used to have that metal bin by the door that they drop off the milk in those big 2-gallon jugs.
Yeah, we have a little different model this time around. We're not using porch boxes. We're not going out at 3 o'clock in the morning. We're going out because people are home now. So we go out we start deliveries at 7:30 in the morning, and our drivers, it's all pre-order. They just go up and leave a plastic milk crate or 1 or 2 crates, because some customers will only order $30 or $40 worth of product, and we have some customers that order $300 worth of product, because it's milk, it's butter, eggs, cheese, and a lot of turkey breast products. We're dealing with Connecticut companies, Royal Sausage Company, trying to think, Hillendale Farms. We're looking at maple syrup from a company in Sandy Hook. We're dealing with Fairfield Bread Company. So we're trying to keep local companies going here. And
Wow.
Aurora Products up in Orange is another local company that we're doing business with. So,
Yeah, well, that's another theme we've been talking about, is community stepping up and people helping out each other and supporting each other. And it's tremendous to hear that you're doing that. And as for your experience with formerly incarcerated people with felony convictions, that's definitely, what we focus on here. And it's interesting. When I woke up today, I was reading an old New York Times article. This from people that had died in 2018. And one of them was a woman who was fairly young, but very renowned in the sociological field and criminal justice. Her name was Deepa Pager, and she did, as part of her doctoral dissertation, a study on individuals with felony convictions. And it's an audit study. And essentially, she sent, and you may have heard of this, a number of people with different backgrounds to potential employers to see if they'd get hired. And they were either white or black, and they either had a felony conviction or not. And it turned out white individuals with felony convictions were more likely to be called back than blacks without. And then blacks with felony convictions were the least likely to be called back. And that just began some of the studies that she did over time. And when you mentioned, the positive experience that you had, she did a few studies after that showed if firms discriminated against formerly incarcerated men, were those men in fact worse employees? No. A 2018 study documented no difference in attrition rates in the military between those with and without criminal records. In fact, formerly incarcerated recruits were more likely to be promoted. And then she,
Andrew, I don't mean to cut you short, but I have to jump off here. But thank you for letting me interrupt your.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I really appreciate the time, and good luck with everything. And we're going to be continuing that conversation in a little bit. So thank you so much, Mr. Wade.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So why don't we go now, and I'll bring back some of those other stats when we begin the business conversation. But before we do that, we're going to go to the normal, we haven't done it in a little bit, but we have Dr. Lisa Puglisi back with us, and we're going to have a public health update. And the reason being is that there's a recent article in the Connecticut Mirror on May 15th, this past Friday, that indicated mass testing has now become available in DOC facilities. And one of the items in the article mentioned that Osborne Correctional Facility, 617 of those tested were more than 100% were positive, and the results were still pending for 278. And a lot of those were asymptomatic. And so they're mulling a decision whether or not to send, given the numbers now, people to Northern, which we had talked about in previous conversations. And so we wanted to bring Dr. Puglisi back. Now that we have mass testing, now that it appears that more people than were previously thought, although we certainly in our initial series believed that this was going to be the case, but are positive, what does that mean both within DOC and also what does that mean for reentry? I'd like to know, are more tests available? If people come back, should they be quarantined? So Dr. Puglisi, it's so nice to have you back with us, and I just love some updates from you on the current situation.
Great, thank you, and thank you for having me back. So yeah, I mean, I think a couple big take homes. So now that we're all following the numbers regularly, I think I'll shift my reporting to you on sort of conceptually where we should be going in thinking about protecting people who live and work in correctional facilities and also their families in the community, with an eye towards this reopening plans. And so I'll say a couple things. Number one is, I think some really important take homes is that we should be sure that in the governor's and the statewide plans for reopening, that correctional facilities are being lumped together and considered with other congregate settings like nursing homes. I think nursing homes and the procedures around them have a lot more political support because many people know somebody, have an elderly relative and maybe have a lot of affection towards them and can kind of align on that these are people who are valuable and ought to be well taken care of and also are particularly vulnerable to COVID. And the same ought to be true for people in our correctional facilities. They are living very closely together. Many have chronic health conditions. They have very little control over their health and daily functioning in some ways, and it's quite rigid and limited. And so, there will be a lot of political power, I think, behind recommendations for nursing homes. And I think one thing that we can all do is really work to push the message out and encourage the governor to consider correctional facilities in that group of congregate settings and extend, if nursing homes are getting more access to testing, correctional facilities ought to be getting more access to testing and the like. So I think that's one big important message. The next is that broad scale testing is critical. So this testing in Osborne, it has to happen. We firmly believe from a public health standpoint, this has to happen. And everyone I'm speaking to who's coming home wants this to happen. People who are inside want to be offered testing from what they're sharing with us. And so, and I would also say families want that, right? We hear from tons of concerned families who want their loved ones to have access to testing inside. So I think it's important. We should expect our numbers to spike. That's just obvious. A lot of people are asymptomatic and infected inside, and we just haven't been testing them. So, the numbers on the DOC tracker jumped 100 and something within the last couple of days. That should be expected. And as they roll out broad scale testing amongst different facilities, we should expect that. And yet it's also not enough. I think that we want even more. For people who haven't had a documented infection with coronavirus while they're incarcerated, they ought to be being tested right before release. I think it helps them know what they need to do to protect their family. I think it allows families to plan to house their loved ones when they come home. And it also allows for people who have much less stable living and plans and environments after release, it allows us to try to identify a scenario that's safe and healthy for them. I'm getting a message that my video wasn't sharing. I apologize.
There you go.
Okay. And so I think that those are important things as well. So not only do we want this one scale broad time testing, but we also, and that should be done by sometime in June the DOC had reported. But we also want to encourage that for people who haven't been tested positive while they're inside, they ought to be tested before release. But with the caveat that that result does not change their release date or anything like that. Like, just because you're positive doesn't mean you need to stay inside. We just need a plan, right? And this allows families and community providers and organizations that house homeless people to plan for them coming home safely. I think that's another really important thing, that we should all be writing letters to the governor to support these concepts. I'd also say that this is an opportunity to really push the DOC to expand, to invest in technology and expand on many levels access to technology inside. So there is a memo on their website in the last week or so that youth who are incarcerated are now getting video visits. Of course they need that. They've needed that for years. Children and developing adults learn in the world how to relate to people by watching their facial expressions. We all do, right? But children with developing brains and young adults need that more than anybody does, to see a face, to get feedback from what that face is telling you in response to what you're saying. It's how we all learn how to act in the world. And it's more personal, makes people, I think, to some level feel more loved or seen or heard. And that's important, not just for young adults and youth, but really for everybody incarcerated inside. So I think it's an opportunity to expand technology. People should, when personal in-person visits are limited, we should be expanding access to video visits, not for a charge. Like, this should be part of health and wellness inside. This impacts the health and wellness of people who are incarcerated and obviously their families in the community. Like, you just feel better if you've seen your loved one and you can see with your own eyes that they're okay. I think that has a big impact. But this is an opportunity for growth, right? Like, this is something we probably should have had years ago. This is not new technology, but it ought to be available to people who are incarcerated and their families. But with the caveat that it does not replace, like, technology does not trump an in-person visit or it doesn't obviate the need for in-person visits. Nothing should replace an in-person visit, but when in-person visits aren't safe, some form of visual communication should be available and should be expected. And given that we know, like, just because we're in this kind of now reopening phase, that doesn't mean we won't see coronavirus again. So in anticipation of ebbs and flows of severity of community level disease, we need to put in place now the measures that will help protect everybody from a public health standpoint, but also protect the health and wellness and mental health of people who are incarcerated. And the level of isolation that comes along with lockdowns and being transferred when you have medical illness is not to be taken lightly or undervalued. It's extreme, and it's what people tell us that they worry about the most, aside from getting sick and not being able to get out. So I think we can't put in place measures that increase isolation. We ought to be prioritizing anything that limits isolation or makes it more tolerable when it's absolutely necessary for medical reasons. And certainly video communication can be one thing that helps a little bit. And then I think a couple other take homes. So we should also be thinking about our halfway houses. They're in the community. People are going to be leaving to work and are trying to save money to get out and be able to support themselves and get employment, as you'll be talking about later. But we are hearing from some of our patients that there can be this kind of perpetual state of quarantine. Once, like, one person gets sick and then a week later another person gets sick, it's almost like you're never out of observation. And so we've been thinking really hard about that and don't have an answer yet, but I think it's something that all of us should be focusing on, because these are people in the community, though, who are really still under pretty strict rules and are at risk of being reincarcerated. follow the rules. So I think that we need to think of ways that people can stay okay, sane, functioning, and all of that while living in halfway houses, acknowledging that there's this weird thing where they're just under a lot of quarantine. Like once there's staggered cases, the whole house is on quarantine. But you can only do that for so long before you're just being, stuck in a room. And so we are on our side thinking very hard about that right now, and I think we all ought to be. Lastly, I don't want to take up too much time, but I was going to share my screen just to show everybody some really great resources that you might think of using. So I think that another thing we ought to be pushing our state to do, and we should all be writing letters to this effect, is better data sharing. We need to know how many tests are being offered to incarcerated people. We need to know the racial, ethnic, demographic breakdown of who's being offered tests. Of those being offered tests, what is the racial breakdown of who's testing positive? What are their outcomes of the people dying, of people being hospitalized? This is stuff that ought to be part of the DOC's website. And we have great mechanisms in Connecticut to do that. We have the CT Open Data platform where many state organizations are able to share their data online, and it's open access. And the same ought to be true, I think, for this data as well. So we should be pushing for data sharing, increased data sharing, and really with a lens towards health equity. So as we talked about in previous conversations, like we need to see those breakdowns. So this is a really great website, the COVID Prison Project. .com. So it's some colleagues of ours at University of North Carolina and University of Miami have put it together. And they're basically scraping the web daily to pull information that's being reported on all these DOC websites. And it's presented in many ways, but I find this way very helpful. So this is confirmed positive cases per 1,000 individuals. So it's basically a prevalence of coronavirus in different scenarios. And if you look at our state, you see and this is before we started broad scale testing. So this isn't the number that you see up on the website today, but you see in orange the rate in correctional facilities, and then you see in blue the rate in the general population. And what you'll see here is that the rate in the prison population is 4 times higher than the community rate. So you see a marked disparity in the rate of infections, the prevalence of infections in our prison system here in our state. And that's true for many states. These others, obviously New York and New Jersey, which have sky high community levels, you don't see that disparity. And in Ohio, you see the opposite, which is that they've done such broad prison testing and such little community testing that you see that disparity. But I'd say in Connecticut, this is probably reflects reality in that we have pretty wide availability of community testing now. I'm testing people every day. They're not having a good deal of trouble getting tested. And so we have a reasonable amount of community testing. There needs to be much, much more going forward. But at this point, people who need tests are getting them. And we still see this 4 times higher rate in our prison population. So I think that's really important take home. And we need to know a lot more about that, the why, the how, the who. And like I said before, the lens towards health disparities and understanding who this is impacting more. So I recommend this website. I find it really helpful in tracking things that are going on. And I will stop there, but I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Puglisi. As usual, it's very, very informative to have you on, and we thank you for your information and your passion about this population. So from what I'm hearing, it's political support, recognizing that folks in correctional facilities are not very different from folks in nursing homes, not just making sure that there's wide scale testing, but also being concerned about the public health and well-being of individuals who are quarantined or who are inside with contact and the like. focusing on planning for release, what's happening in halfway houses, making sure when we limit isolation that we have good plans in place for maintaining contact. And then better data sharing is imperative so that we know as a community what we're planning for and what to understand about this population, how it's being impacted. So thank you so much. And I think right now, because of the time, we'll shift right on to the panel discussion on reentry employment during the coronavirus. And we're joined by a few panelists, and thanks very much to Rob Hebert, who's the member of the Connecticut Reentry Collaborative, and he's the co-chair in the Bridgeport Reentry Council. And he's also Senior Vice President of Business Development and Reentry Affairs at Career Resources. And Rob has been a part of our regular collaborative check-ins, and during these, we have them twice a week with all the roundtables. He's been indicating that they had some virtual job fairs, and contrary to a lot of the conversation happening about unemployment and people being impacted, much like Mr. Wade, who was on earlier, there is opportunity. And in that, because of the way the system is operating and people getting resources, as I understand it, that there's more people unemployed that are actually financially sustaining themselves, and therefore there are jobs that are open that people aren't going back to. That there's a tremendous opportunity for people coming out of incarceration who won't be able to collect unemployment, who may not have filed taxes and get that $1,200 check to actually be employed. So I want to bring on Rob now. Rob, give us a little background on what employment looks like during coronavirus and some opportunities you may see in the current environment.
Good morning, Andrew. Thanks for having me. I will tell you that we operate the American Job Centers in the Waterbury, which is the Northwest, and Bridgeport, which is Southwest regions of the state. And our funders, a while back, asked us, what was our response going to be servicing employers and job seekers. And we had the idea that rather than do nothing and wait for this to pass, that we were going to try to get out ahead and do some virtual job fairs. Dr. Clark, who's on the call with me, who's our Vice President for Strategic Initiatives and a Zoom guru, helped us out. And we had a fairly good response. I thought it would be good, but I think it was better than that. And we learned a lot. As you said, the narrative is that everybody's unemployed, there's no jobs, and it's, utter despair. However, when we had these job fairs, we learned a little something different. For example, we had in the Waterbury region, we had an employer, I believe, from Meriden, who they were opening up a new shop, and they needed 60 employees. That was startling to me that any employer would be looking for that many at one time. So yeah, I think there's a part of the unemployment rate, and just from what we saw in these two instances, I think there's a part of it that is people waiting and seeing if they're going to get called back or not. I think the stimulus money and the extra unemployment compensation is keeping people at home. Because I sat there. I got a call last night at 7:30 from a road construction company in Waterbury looking for 3 mechanics. Work is ongoing. If you're driving around the state, there's road construction. I see that we have Beth DuPont from O&G Industries on the line, and maybe she can tell you a little bit also about the ongoing work. But it's definitely out there. I feel strongly that if you want to work and earn money, as opposed to collecting unemployment or getting some other compensation from the government, I think it's there.
Great. Thank you, Rob. So yeah, you mentioned Beth and Beth DuPont, the Human Resources and EEO Officer of O&G Industries. Ms. DuPont, maybe you can tell us a little bit about O&G for those that don't know it in the state, although it is a sizable company. And then some of your experience hiring formerly incarcerated individuals, as well as what you see on the horizon with the coronavirus and otherwise.
So thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Obviously, O&G is one of the largest construction firms in Connecticut. We've been in business since 1923. Right now, we have on our payroll just about 900 employees. We are both union and non-union, and we're always looking, to Rob's point and to underscore, I'm looking for mechanics. I can't find mechanics right now, and I want people who want to work. Because we do have positions available, and they run the scope. So, of course, if you're looking as a laborer, you would have to be part of the laborers union. So, as I said, we are union. I think there was struggles to find capable, engaged employees before. We continue to find that through this pandemic. I can tell you, as head of HR, it is challenging. It is incredibly chaotic. It's a fast-moving situation right now. It literally changes sometimes every 15 minutes. And of course, as an employer too, we're dealing not only with trying to figure out the alignment between CDC guidance, OSHA guidance, state Department of Public Health, local department, and how do those all align with each other? Because at the end of the day, we are a good employer, and we want to make sure that we are doing everything possible, good faith, no doubt about it, in terms of creating a safe and healthy workplace for everybody. So, moving forward, it's going to be interesting in terms of how this sort of shakes out, so to speak. I'm curious to see sort of what are the new skill sets that we may be looking for. I think the core skill sets don't change: focused, engaged, reliable, versatile, flexible, will not change. So we will always look for those types of candidates. Uptick in hiring. Yeah, I think there's a good possibility of that. I hope so. I can tell you that we are very strong from a construction specific to schools. We're very strong in terms of Connecticut DOT. As long as Connecticut DOT continues to get dollars for infrastructure bills, we're currently working heavy in the Charter Oak Bridge in Hartford and in Branford and West Hartford right now. So I'm optimistically or cautiously optimistic.
Well, thank you so much. And, I hear what you're saying in terms of making sure that you're doing it right. And I think per Dr. Puglisi's point, people coming out of corrections, if they're looking for employment, it's important for us to know if they've been tested, when they're walking up to your door, especially given the rates that are in DOC facilities, like she mentioned. So
that's going to be.
Yes, please go ahead.
I was just going to say that's going to be interesting because, I have my HR hat on for sure. We're as we hire reentry, and many of them will go through our unions. We're working with our unions, and I think you bring up a good point. Do they come in with certification to say that they tested negative? I don't know if that's relevant or not because it is community spread. So we're sort of testing and learning as we go. I can tell you we're changing our orientation. In fact, as we start orientation, literally this week, we are introducing a module about, COVID and pandemic and hygiene and what our rules and protocols are in terms of shared responsibility in terms of managing health and safety.
Right. Well, it just, I think, goes to highlight how important it is to have the public health officials as partners in this process. Question that I had from the chat inbox is, and this was to Mr. Wade, but as I understand it, through Mr. Hebert, that you have employed formerly incarcerated individuals. Do you have to overcome anything are there particular roadblocks that you face in hiring formerly incarcerated folks?
I'm very fortunate in that we have an organization. It's also the sector that we're in, construction as well. It is about, developing a strong workforce, and we recognize that our workforce will come from many different places, including reentry, and we don't want to create any barriers that will inhibit our ability to find qualified, focused, engaged, want to work employees. That is, so we don't want to create any barriers. So from my perspective, as I talk to other employers, it's really important for us to, as a federal contractor, because we do follow OFCCP rules, we do background screens, drug testing. We're very open, completely transparent about that. If anyone has concerns, particularly with our reentry, I am their only contact, sort of their internal navigator, so to speak. So we create pathways for them for success. Look at, are there stigmas? There's stigmas on a lot of different things. There's going to be stigma with COVID right now, and we have to be at least cognizant and sensitive about that. So, I also think it's important for HR practitioners and owners to understand what the EEOC rules are related to background screens, if in fact they do them. Yeah, there's a lot of landmines, so to speak, but at the end of the day, for us, it is about workforce development, not only now, but our future, and we want engaged people willing and ready to work, and we will work with them to make that happen. So from my perspective, I think it's important that HR practitioners and owners understand EEOC rules. They need to take a strong look at terms of what their workforce will look like now, 1 year, 2 year, 5 years down the road, and based on their business needs. And if they are doing background screens, make sure that again, owners and practitioners understand, what does that all mean? And, how do we best, like I said, grow the workforce? I hope that answered your question.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And it actually brings to light a point. We were hoping to get Mark Soicher from CBIA, who I believe is the head of HR with CBIA, and they had planned this spring to put out an employer's toolkit for hiring folks with criminal backgrounds. And I'm not sure if that's still a spring plan, but and I imagine, given everything that you've said and what we know, that probably is changing a bit. But we had also at Central been putting together a training for HR professionals on criminal background checks, and we were supposed to be presenting at a May conference of human resource professionals in Connecticut. So you may have even been going to that. I'm not sure, but yeah, so there is a lot of work happening in this. And I think what we have found is, especially with HR professionals, the devil's in the details, and that there's not, it seemed to me that there wasn't a lot of data backing up decisions about not hiring folks with criminal backgrounds. It was more just maybe some biases and a risk aversion, a perceived risk aversion. And so kind of cracking through that veneer and getting to the reality of things, I think will go a long way in some of those details to get HR professionals more comfortable in hiring.
Well, I think that goes to sensitivity, awareness training. The more you know, the better decision making, the more tools and resources and data that you have, you make just better decisions. And candidly, at the end of the day, there is a workforce shortage. So how do we eliminate barriers and create better lanes? So we're hiring the best of all the different folks that are coming to, apply, whether it's to OMG or any other place. And, I think there is a fear factor, but like I said, I think raising awareness and sensitivity as it ties into the actual bottom line, workforce development, you can't, you need people in order to build things. Or deliver a service. And so it is about the people and, how do we smartly develop different lanes for engaged workforce? And I think reentry is one of them.
Right. And, I had mentioned some articles by Diva Pager, a sociologist who had been really preeminent in the field on this. And one of her studies was with those employers that practice discrimination, they were twice as likely to go bust as non-discriminating firms. And the reason is because of their biases, they overlooked the best candidates. And so, understanding that biases, as we understand in the general field, have a negative impact, allowing HR professionals and employers to understand what those biases can be, because a lot of them could be unconscious, is important. I'd like to bring on Dr. William Clark now, Vice President of Strategic Initiatives at Career Resources. As a doctor, I know you've done a lot of studying in this field as well, and I'd love to bring in your thoughts on, current environment with employment with folks that are formerly incarcerated. What are the things that you're seeing and your perspective on this issue?
Yeah, I think our experiences really dovetails with what Beth shared in terms of the readiness of job seekers as they come into the workspace. And so, one of the things that Career Resources works hard to do is to make available easily accessible job readiness training. And while we have done, I think successfully, a number of virtual job fairs where employers are saying there's a huge need out there, and of course, Beth just echoed that for her company. What we continue to focus on is how do we prepare job seekers coming out of the justice system to prepare them for these open opportunities, because they do exist. Folks like Wade's Dairy, they want to hire these folks. And so how do we prepare them? One of the things that we're addressing now more than ever during this moment, this moment in history, as it relates to the pandemic, is how do we train our folks in a virtual environment? And what we've learned, and I think successfully learned, is that one, connectivity is the issue, but isn't the issue. What that simply means is we've made some assumptions as providers that folks who have high barriers struggle to find connection points to online training environments. And what we've learned is that that's not true. They've had the cell phones and tablets and the laptops, or if they didn't, they got their hands on it and found internet connections. What our students have been looking for is a deep connection with someone who's going to curate their learning as they're seeking for new job opportunities, and to curate their learning in an online environment. A lot of our clients have never operated in an online environment. They've never done an online job interview. Many of them may be obtaining online careers. And so the experience that we're offering through the Career Resources Strive program is just that. It's a hybrid where they are completely online, but they have a deep connection with one of our counselors, one of our case managers, or one of our trainers to walk them through over a 3-week period what it's like to operate in an online environment, whether it's prepping for a job interview, whether it's dealing with workplace conflict, whether it's being disciplined and actually working from home, whether it's getting the proper tools, making the right investment into your work resources and tools, etc. So those are the things that we're seeing that are top of mind, and we're trying to do our best to line up as many people as we can to fill the open jobs that do exist.
Wow. Thank you so much. And one of the things that you mentioned about the technology piece, and I'll go back to Dr. Puglisi's point about this provides an opportunity to show a light on where technology does and doesn't exist in the DOC, and recognizing like the current system that we have was really built up significantly over the 90s for the main point of custody control, and not, as we saw in looking at the system in Norway, creating a normalcy, an environment that most likely is akin to an environment that you'll be returning to, so that you are essentially creating good neighbors. Do you see any roadblocks with technology that exists currently in DOC? Are you doing any pre-release work? Are there things that could be in place? And I'd love to hear this from also Ms. DuPont. Are there things and trainings that could be in place ahead of time that would better prepare people so that you're not dealing with all this stuff, the moment that they hit the community upon release?
Andrew, this is Rob. I can speak to the work that was scheduled to happen inside. We had received some funding, and we were going to be running Strive cohorts, as well as platform to employment cohorts inside several of the facilities. Actually, it was supposed to start in April. That was really bad timing. As you know, everything got shut down. There are no providers going inside at all. But our intent was to target folks initially that were scheduled to hit the DOC work release programs, so that when they hit the houses for whatever provider, including ourselves, they would sort of have a leg up and be prepared to both job search, secure, and maintain employment. But that's on hold, and I don't know. I mean, anybody's guess is good, I guess, is when that's going to start up at this point.
Just a couple things I wanted to add to that. I think I'm learning as well organizationally how we best provide support for good success, whether it's good success at O&G, whether it's in the initial job that they applied for and they got, to can we move them inside the organization because maybe the initial job wasn't just a good fit for them, and that's okay because that happens for all of us, right? Or that they are good, engaged, reliable employees, but that after a year or two, now they've got a stepping stone to something better because we were all collectively, including that person, were able to grow a skill set, and now they can move on to something else that is even a better fit for them. So I find that I'm sort of testing and learning as I go, and how do we make it successful for everybody? I really like the idea of having an internal navigator. That would be me right now, just to make sure that we're doing all the right things and that employee understands that they've got resources available. Sometimes it's not going to be their immediate supervisor, and that's okay. But also, working with career resources as well, that they've got external support because we all need a safety net. And it's also about having candid but kind conversations with people about what's working and what's not working. This is where leadership really comes into play, and good, strong communication skills, not only with the organization, but with the employee as well, and allowing them to have voice if they have a concern about something.
And Andrew, I think just to kind of put a button on this and to piggyback off of Beth, I think this is why programs like Strive, programs like Platforms to Employment, I think has a place in the community. The ongoing case management is so critical for our clients to obtain because they're going to run into these situations, as Beth talked about, where they're going to need some objective advice from an external resource that can help bridge the gap of understanding how to navigate this issue and to see it for what it is. Given the restraints and constraints our clients are dealing with, having been away for quite a bit of time, not familiar with the culture of the workplace, not familiar with how to resolve workplace conflict, what we provide helps bridge that gap as a third party so that the employer doesn't bear the full brunt of navigating that alone.
Right. And, that's, I think to your point, really an important thing to consider, because as we had Mike Lawler on a few shows ago and talked about the 5,000 individuals that will be in the community and that are less than the population that DOC had in 2017, the last time they closed the prison, at the rates that the population is declining, there's a tremendous opportunity for a huge shift in resources from the justice system out into the community to support the businesses, the very positive types of activities that get people to stay home and lead productive lives. And so I think what you're talking about is most likely critical to that. And Ms. DuPont, I'd like to say that if you were everybody's HR director, I think Connecticut would be a a great place. It's so refreshing to hear your viewpoint. I'd like to bring on Andrea Prenez. She's a returning citizen from Greater Waterbury, and I believe knows Rob and potentially Dr. Clark. And I'd love to hear your perspective on this conversation in terms of finding employment as a returning citizen, some of the roadblocks you faced, and some of the positive things that may have happened.
Okay. So thank you so much for inviting me. I do know Rob Hebert, and he has been a tremendous help. I've only been released probably just about a month ago now. So coming back with the coronavirus, is challenging. I've gone on one job interview so far, and just every day I just keep doing online applications. I don't even know at this point how many I've sent out. But in terms of what they're doing in the prison to help us, I've got to be very forthcoming. There's not a lot of help at this point with the coronavirus. Everybody was very nervous, and in terms of our medical care there, it's atrocious, to be very honest.
Well, you know what I'm going to do right now, because we're right about the time when we're moving on to the next panel, where we're going to shift a little bit to talk about entrepreneurship. So not necessarily going to an employer to ask for work, but maybe creating your own. I'd love to keep you on the call here, Ms. Prenez, and bring on Daryl McGraw, also a formerly incarcerated person who works with the Connecticut Reentry Collaborative, is a specialist with us on making sure impacted people are involved in the process, policy and otherwise, and had a message in the chat box to you that was welcome home.
Oh, that's so nice. Thank you.
And so, Mr. McGraw, the mic is yours, and maybe you can lead this next panel and bring us on with Ms. Prenez, and I know you have a few guests as well.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. Yes, and once again, Andrea, welcome home. Welcome home. Good to see you. Good to see you on the side of the fence. Glad to have you part of the conversation and part of the family of the Reentry family of Connecticut. So hopefully we can help you. I'd like to say first, man, great start, Andrew. Great crew, great panel. Rob, as always, but man, Miss DuPont is definitely my new hero in Connecticut. We definitely need to build that friendship. Shout out to those that are on the that have joined us again, that join us every week. We really appreciate it. And those that I see that do this work every day, that connecting individuals to jobs daily. Before COVID, after COVID, they're in the trenches connecting with individuals that are impacted, justice involved. They do this work every day, trying to keep people. One of the things is not only finding someone a job, but keep the hope in them when they get that denial. And like our friend just said, getting those doors closed in your face. Having those challenges that that face individuals with a criminal background. I've been blessed to be able to bring some people on to talk about those challenges after release. And my friend Edward Andrews and Gordon, Edward, are you there?
Yes, I'm on.
How you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
So let's jump right into it, man. Let's jump right into this conversation. A lot of nice, it was nice hearing a lot of things. I know one of the things I saw, I don't know if you saw the chart that Lisa put up, but she put up this are you driving? You're not driving, are you?
Yes, I just pulled over.
Okay, cool, because the last thing we need is you to get into some trouble with driving. You know what I mean? So I don't want that to be my fault. We just we're trying to get this thing going. So I appreciate you pulling over for us, brother. But one of the things that we're going to open up this dialogue about, like Andrea just said, and talking about Magic getting out, right?
Yeah.
COVID and having to virtually put out these applications. But could you talk quickly about some of the challenges that you experienced upon release? And let's talk about that.
When I first got out, it's been some time now. I had nothing. It was very difficult to find a job. I got shut down. I remember doing 6 months of straight applications, applying, no interviews, because my criminal record is very extensive. I have 23 felony convictions, so that was a big thing. No one would hire me. After some time, I had some trial and errors. I went up and down, but when I finally committed to this, I had to really reinvent myself. I went back to school. I got an education. I found a career path. And now I'm a substance abuse counselor. I work in facilities hand to hand with individuals. but it took a lot of effort. I remember being in prison. We had a drive. I was up in Summers for a number of years. I remember there was a small core group of us. We used to do mock interviews amongst each other, because one of the hardest things is when looking for a job was that selling point when you get in the door to have a face-to-face interview. When the worst question you could possibly come up with, how do you answer it? And that was always, yes, I have a criminal background. That's like one of the hardest questions. So we used to practice answering that question, how to put a spin on it, how to sell yourself. And it was really difficult at first, but after a while, I kept going. I had to take menial task jobs that were just basic minimum wage, barely able to take care of myself. But I didn't give up. I did not give up, and things started to change for me. And now I have a life beyond my wildest dreams. I couldn't imagine 12 years ago doing what I do today.
Man.
But it took some perseverance. It took dedication.
Congratulations on the recent CAC. I appreciate you, brother. Thank you. Just so Mr. Andrews, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. Thank you, D.
Oh, you're looking good. You're looking good, brother. You put me to shame, man. You put me to shame. Hey, we want to talk about, you just heard Gordon talk about being released and, the challenges. And I know that, you being recently released yourself. Talk about some of those challenges that you face, because, I always talk about that 5-year plan, right? We talk about the planning, and you heard the brother Gordon talk about mock interviews. These are things that we used to do, we do amongst ourselves. When those programs didn't exist, we would challenge ourselves, and that's what we call iron sharpening iron, right? So, and you and I, we've conversed on the inside and on the outside. So let's talk about, some of the challenges that you experienced. I know you had a 5-year plan. Could you let's talk about what you experienced when you got out and what you've done thus far, because I'm super proud of you, man.
Yeah, thank you, D, again, for allowing me. My challenges was, I was just getting shut down. It took me like 8 months or 9 months just to get a job like at Restaurant Depot. And being in jail for all that time, I'm used to the doors closing, and so I was already aware of it. But when you be in prison and when you hear these stories that you can't get a job out there, and you be thinking that's probably for them, until you come home and experience it yourself. And it was real for me, and then when I got a good job, I'm not pointing no fingers, I got laid off or I was stuck for that, man. But I kept my persistence out there. I know there was a God.
Yeah.
And that's the one who I was praying to. And my mother always told me, if you want something done right, do it yourself.
Right.
And so for my population, I started SCRIPT, Second Chance Reentry Initiative Program, so I could put things together and be respected for my population.
Right. Hey, I appreciate that. What we're seeing, and I'm hoping people are listening, man. I'm loving this conversation, because what you're seeing is resiliency. You're seeing superheroes, man. You're seeing superheroes. Well, no matter what, we talk about the boulders and we talk about the pebbles and the challenges, but two people that just spoke briefly have already talked about the battles that they've overcome already. And none of us will negate the fact that these challenges and these barriers exist and they're still out there. But through that process, or through going through prison, we find ourselves being resilient and having to be resilient, because you have to eat and you have to do, if you've done the work, you're not even considering something illegal, but how do I put food on my table legally with all these barriers and challenges that are coming up? Which makes me want to bring in our next guest is Matt Connell from Goodwin. I know Matt is doing some training. We work together, working with individuals, mentoring them. And it's Matt. Matt, are you on the call?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, brother. How you doing?
Good to see you, Daryl.
You as well.
Oh, thanks for having me. Good to see you, Mr. Andrews. So yeah, we started this program at Goodwin. We were fortunate enough to get a grant from CT Next. So we are, Mr. Andrews is a student in the program. It's the ENET program. It's an 18 credit college certificate program that teaches individuals that have been incarcerated how to start their own business. So it's down and dirty, kind of into the weeds, nitty gritty, how to hang your own shingle, so that individuals coming out or that are out don't have to rely on going through those barriers of obstacles for employment, because they're many and they're great, and oftentimes, well, we appreciate all the employers in the state that are willing to work with individuals that have a past. Oftentimes the jobs don't provide enough income for sustainability, and so one of the backbones in my mind, in our minds of communities, is small business. And so a lot of people out there with a lot of good ideas. So let's help them hang that shingle and become self-employed and hopefully employ others. That's kind of our philosophy.
I appreciate that, Matt. What are some of the challenges, not barriers, but challenges that you've seen with working with individuals coming fresh through the door? Everybody's excited. When we're on the ground floor, everybody wants to start a business. Everybody wants to do this. But then you come in and they have a really great idea, but there's still some challenges. We always talk about when brothers and sisters come out, they still might be a little rough around the edges. Any challenges that surprised you as an individual now educating these individuals that are coming back, that are coming out and excited to have this opportunity? But how any of the challenges that you faced and that could help people that are on the call, maybe considering hiring individuals? As we've heard so far, we are the best population out there. We're going to show up and show out. So any of the challenges that you can help us highlight?
So Daryl, awesome question and good points. I would say that across the faculty at Goodwin, one of the common that we've seen and we continually say is we've never seen a hungrier group of students in our lives. Like, we work with students all the time that are our typical population, 28 years or predominantly female, come to school to kind of better their life, and yet this pilot group, these 15 students that are in this pilot group, are hungry for the knowledge. With that, we when we were on campus, we had some things that we had to go through, how to act professionally in back and forths with students and our biggest challenge, honest, is a reoccurring theme on this call. It's technology. I grossly underestimated, to be honest, the level of technological skills, which in today's college environment is essential. All of our learning is done through a learning management system. And so I found that obstacle, that is one has created one of the largest obstacles for us, especially with COVID having to shift completely online, where so many of and I think you could speak to this better than I could, right? I think that this group of students thrived on the in-person, the human contact, and then to be kind of go online with the barriers of technology, the lack of human contact. It's been a challenge for us to get to where we are in this second semester, but I'm happy to say that out of 15 students that have started, it looks 12 have completed successfully the first semester, and I think all 12 of them will complete the second semester, pitch their business, receive some seed money, and be successful. So
awesome, Matt. Hey, thank you for the work that you do. I'm going to shift to Andrea because maybe you could get in that next cohort that comes out. Andrea, we love to see you get in there.
Yeah.
And you know what? One of the things, if you can't find a job, you build one. You create that position if you have that capability and that capacity. And I think a program like this or others, but how is it? Matt pointed out where technology was a challenge. You came out and you were able to file applications and use the internet with no problem. How'd you have that skill set without them teaching you that in jail?
Well, thankfully, before I went to jail, I was a marriage and family therapist.
Okay.
So I'm lucky and I'm very grateful that I have a lot of education behind me. So I have my master's degree.
Right.
So, for years, obviously I had to use the internet and, an iPhone and all of that stuff, as well as helping my daughters with it.
Right.
But you're absolutely right. The people that are incarcerated, we have no access to anything with technology.
Right.
A matter of fact, I would sit with some women and kind of, go over how they would use different things, what would be helpful for them. Even just simple things like how to write a resume.
Right.
So that is really, really lacking in the system. I agree.
I appreciate that. Mr. Andrews, how about technology? Was it a challenge for you? Did you jump right in and start texting and, Googling and Zooming and all that? Or was it a challenge for you in the start?
Indeed. When I went to prison, we had beepers. They had cell phones, and I didn't know how to do any of that, and I felt real small. Even when, I went to Springfield and got my bachelor's, I felt I was I just felt I didn't fit because I didn't know nothing about technology. Before I left prison, I was at Osborne. I was doing reentry with Miss Trina Sexton, and, they just got a template, but when you come out here, you got to do a real live resume. You know what I'm saying? And it was crazy, But I never let none of that just get me down. Like, I just had to keep on pushing. But I think the hardest part was just doing the time. Coming out here, I think I still was being penalized, for my past. But I didn't let that, deter me. I just kept that mission and kept that vision in my heart, and just to keep it going strong.
Right. You're true inspiration to me. Hey, Gordon, you wanna touch base on that technology issue that Matt had brought up, and everybody else has spoke about so far?
Yeah. See, fortunately for me, I didn't have an issue because I don't know. I've always been very inclined with my hands. I can figure things out. So it wasn't a hard adjustment for that with me. The adjustment was trying to overcome the stigma of my background, trying to create something because I was tired of only being seen for what was on paper. That was the hard part. That was how I love how you said, if you can't find a job, create a job. I couldn't find a job for my skill set, so I had to, that's why I went back to school. I had to I had to file off those rough edges and become more presentable and adapt to the situation that I was in. Because my biggest thing, I just kept focused on, I wasn't going back to prison.
Right.
That was no longer an option. I took that off the table so it couldn't be an option. And I did whatever I needed to do. So once I started going back to school, I had to take jobs as a monitor. I was just like a babysitter at facilities with some keys and just watch people. Mm-hmm. But that grew into other things.
Right. Man, I really appreciate it, and I love this panel, but we got to keep it real. We got to keep it 100 because the people that listen to us are going to take this back to communities. Mm-hmm. Everybody on this panel right now, who I love dearly, we all have college degrees. You know, as well as I know, that everybody that comes out is not going to be as fortunate as us. So how do we get them up to speed to be able to fill out resumes on the internet, being able to apply for jobs and be able to create positions? They will not have the same skill set. So I see people like Fred Hodges that works with family reentry, and those individuals that see these brothers that come out rough, rugged, and raw, still thinking there are beepers out there. How do all of us as a community, because that's who we are, how do we get those people up to speed? Right? Because and we also have to advocate for DOC to, step their game up electronically too. Right. So it's not just a template, but it's actually, real hard, like you using a computer, we're telling brothers, they got all this figured out. When you talk to somebody on the inside, they got it all figured out. So you get out here and realize, oh, this is a cell phone. Oh, we're FaceTiming now. Hold on, you can pause the news. So let's talk about that. Like, how do we engage those individuals that are not at the college level, may not be able to receive the same education opportunities that you, I, and Andrea have had?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody?
What I could say is, it's like what I was taught. You meet a person where they're at, not
Yes,
where you're
sir.
at.
Right.
You meet them where they're at. See, and there's no judgment, because a lot of our brothers and sisters will come out of incarceration, and truth be told, a big percentage can't even read or write, do the basic things.
Right.
So you meet them where they're at. It's like they say, it takes
Right.
a village. We are that village. We have to go back and help them fill out applications, show them, teach them. The same way we were taught, we have to give back in that aspect. And you got to meet them where they're at,
Right.
because that's just where they're at.
Man, I'm loving you, brother. Definitely. Thank you so much. Andrea, you want to add to that? Because we got some people that coming out struggling too, and they don't got that marriage family's counselor certificate. They just trying to get by.
Right. Absolutely. What I think, and what makes a lot of sense is, starting small. So I keep hearing about these tablets that everyone in DOC is supposed to be getting, to, even if they don't have money on their books and stuff like that, where they can start doing emails and electronic commissary. And I know it may sound very little, but for a lot of the women that I was around, just teaching them on something like that, I think would be a huge help.
Right. Edward, talk to me, brother. How are we going to help those people that don't have that bachelor's degree from Springfield like you do?
Well, phase three in my program, we got a career development, whereas, those who's in charge of that section help the individuals build a resume, and get try to get them a career and not just, under the table job,
I appreciate it. Hey, Matt, I know you're still on the call, right?
Yep.
I know eventually the plan is to go into the prison and really now you're going to see people who don't have that skill set. Will this be something that you guys will be looking at, teaching technology before they even hit the street?
That's our goal. So in our scale up grant that we'll be applying for in July, we do have a preliminary partnership with the DOC to allow us into Wilbur Sobolski to run a cohort inside. And so one of the big conversations we're having with the DOC is around issues of technology and what access students will have, so that we can get them up to speed on technology during that cohort while they're still in. The other thing we're doing is we're actually, it's due Friday, we're applying for a federal grant through the Minority Business Development Association or agency. And that would not be credit bearing. That would be a like boot camp, workshop, continuing ed thing. So you wouldn't need a high school diploma or a GED equivalency to come into those programs, and it would be a mix of technology and off technology learning, so that we can, again, I think to Gordon's point, to meet people where they're at. I think that's a really good way to approach, is you got to meet people where they're at.
Cool. I really appreciate that, and love the work that you guys are doing. I know that because understanding the challenges and making sure that formerly incarcerated people are involved in every part of the process, due to the fact that we understand that there are significant challenges. And I want to just shift to that before we go, and making sure people hear us loud and clear about that, the process, and making sure that not only are formerly incarcerated people a part of the training and the education and the mentoring, but that they're at the table when these plans are being put together. Sitting next to Ms. DuPont, sitting next to Matt Connell, sitting next to Rob Hebert is someone who actually has been through this process. We will be remiss that if you do not have this, if you have not had this lived experience, how valuable having someone with the lived experience, who has been in incarcerated, who has been in a cell, who has experienced what it's like to lose freedom, to be part of these conversations, these bigger conversations, because a lot has been like, those doors shut because of lack of knowledge. We see that happening, and I love the fact that Andrew hit us with some statistics, and I'm hoping that he comes back with that, because that's very important. But before we go, I just want to throw it out to the group that, let's take technology off the table. What are just some of the basic supports that individuals need upon release? And Andrea, being that you are most recent returning citizen, what do you think you needed as soon as you got out from the community, as well as family members as well? What is it that people need when they get out?
I think, certainly love and support from your family and from your friends is major. And I just think, from the community in terms of looking for a job, realizing that, when you're incarcerated, we all made a bad choice at some point. We're still a human being. We're still good people. And that just the hope, you guys gave me so much hope today, and I appreciate that. Just the hope knowing that I can go forward and hold my head up and be applying for these jobs and moving forward.
Cool. Thank you. Gordon.
Yes.
Gordon, what do people need coming right out the gate? Right out the gate, what did you need when you touched down?
I needed someone to let me know that I had a skill set, even though I didn't think so, that went onto a resume. I had a dear friend that showed me how to take even my prison experience, my chores growing up, and make that actually skills that I could put on to a resume. If I did chores, if I shoveled my parents' driveway every winter, I had landscaping experience, and I needed to know how to word that.
Mr. Andrews, brother, Edward, what did you need right out the gate as soon as you touched down?
I needed a plan. And not only a plan, I needed a support system like nothing about us without us. Absolutely. That was my whole team, and that's what we help each other out. We support one another. We cry to one another. And you need that support for real, because, you can come out here and do a handstand in quicksand if you don't.
Appreciate that. It's interesting. We just had a recently returning citizen who got out in the midst of COVID, similar to our friend Andrea, and he got a job day one after 20-something years. Got a job.
That's
and
great.
He didn't have an ID. So he couldn't do anything. So, one of the things that we're going to start we've had this conversation numerous times before about the ID and the importance of the ID.
Mm-hmm.
But getting out in the midst of COVID, with everything we've heard from Dr. Puglisi on down, from every expert and hirer, you can't fill out that W-9. You can't fill out that I-9, rather. You can't fill out the I-9 without an ID, without two forms of ID. So these are challenges that are still going to exist that have happened pre-COVID, happening during COVID, and we're hoping that will no longer continue after COVID. These are things that are very important. The number one thing is a person that we talk about need. This individual needed an ID just so he could put food on his table.
Right.
And that's a challenge, and that's still continuously being a barrier. I don't think you can attend Goodwin College without an ID either. My knowledge of school. So we need to be thinking about those things. I'm going to shift to Andrew real quick to if you want to talk about some of those facts. I thank you. I love my panel. You guys, we're going to stay connected. We are a family. Those of you that are impacted on the call, that are following us closely, let's stay together. We're doing this together. We are a unit. This is a movement, not a moment. We need to stay loud and proud.
That's right.
Thank you, Daryl. Thank you.
Daryl, may I say something? It's Beth DuPont.
Yes, absolutely.
Just a quick thing, a couple things that I just wanted to share with you. I think from an ownership perspective, from a leadership employer perspective, but it does work both ways. I tell people all the time, be curious, not judgmental. Be curious, not judgmental. Number two, to lead with emotional intelligence. Lead with respect. Lead with a sense of hope, curiosity. Those are two from a leadership perspective. Three, from an employee perspective, actions speak louder than words. Tell me that you want to move forward. Show me, tell me what you've done in order to make change. So actions speak louder than words. And then three, we talked a little bit about barrier removal. You hit the nail on the head, Daryl. You got to get into the weeds. That's me. That's the employee too, and it's all the safety net folks out there. I can't hire someone if they don't have an ID. They're going to have to go through that, that I-9 form, and it breaks my heart when someone doesn't have enough money to get their ID for their driver's license, for example, or something. So that's another barrier we easily can remove. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Beth. I mean, like I said, you're one of my favorite people right now. We definitely need to connect, because something that you said that was really powerful when you started to talk about workforce development, you started to talk about bottom line, you started to talk about business and treating people as human beings. You didn't talk about their past. You talked about right now, here and now. We're talking about workforce development. We're talking about good people that are going to show up. And I really appreciate that comment from you, as well as our friend from Wade's Dairy as well. Thank you so much for the work that you've been doing.
Can I say one thing, Daryl?
Thank you, Daryl.
Sure,
You
absolutely.
too.
Absolutely. Let's go.
Yeah, the last thing I got to say is the one element that be missing is the element of someone discovering who they are. They could get jobs and all of that, but underneath the surface, what about what about the pain they hold it in? What they suffering from? So this is why, that element, like what you teach, urban trauma, emotional regulations, that got to be incorporated as well.
You're absolutely right. Those are the things that we got to consistently deal with, because you get somebody a job and we got to still work with them. And I'm sure, Fred was on this call right now. We were talking about, you get that first $400 you're working with Beth, but how do we teach that person not to take that $400 and flip it? You know what I mean? We got to get out of the criminogenic thinking. So there's a whole process to reentry. It's not just getting them housing, getting them a job. It's working with them through the process so they can sit somewhere and be proud of what they've accomplished. Hey, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone that's been on this call. This has probably been one of our best. Andrew, you want to highlight some things that you've heard? And just thank you for everyone that stuck with us. I really appreciate it, because each one of you, we talk about the ripple effect. That's that drop of pebble in the water, and it spreads. So hopefully everyone that heard this today will take this somewhere, and we'll make some change for people that are coming home and that are already home. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl. And I would agree. I think this is probably one of our best yet, in that it exemplifies the exact thing that we're talking about creating and fostering and nurturing. This has been, to me, a call that shows community, that shows people caring about one another, that doesn't look at what you've done, but looks at what you can be for the betterment of everybody and not just the individual. And Edward talked about discovering who you really are, not just being okay with the basic. I remember the first time I went to Wesleyan prison education program inside Cheshire, and I saw these individuals who were mostly Black and brown men taking college courses, and it broke my heart to see the potential that they had, what they were learning, what they brought back. You're hearing Wesleyan professors saying that these were the best students they ever had, and thinking like, why did it had to be that it was in prison that they had this opportunity? Why did they have to go there in the first place? Why can't we be creating these communities at home? And I think that's the larger point that we're trying to get to, is that we don't need the justice system to solve our problems, which was the mentality in the past, in which we're trying to break. And I think the people on this call are giving us a way forward on how to do that. So I want to thank everybody for participating. I know we brought up the ID thing, and we're just touching base. I'm sure Rob's itching to talk about that, but there's a lot of things, technology and otherwise. I think that what this shows is, if the community is allowed to be a part of that solution, if it demands to be a part of that solution, then those solutions will come, and they'll create better opportunities for individuals, for the families that are impacted in the larger community. So thank you so much, and make sure to join us next week. We're actually going to be shifting a little bit and talking about civic action and about how we can take these ideas and bring them. I know Fred Hodges had a comment in there. How are we going to now take this and make it the political movement to make those changes? We'll be talking about that. So thank you all for joining us. Thank all the panelists, and have a good day. And we hope to see you again soon.